Support quirks. At the very bottom of the quirk hierarchy are the support quirks. Support quirks in My Hero Academia aren't about throwing punches or blasting villains. They're all about boosting others. These quirks specialize in tactical aid, healing, or providing equipment, all of which can completely change how a team performs. They might not look flashy or destructive, but they're a huge deal in hero work. With the right support quirk in play, a whole team can perform better, stay in the fight longer, and pull off game-changing strategies that turn a losing battle into a win. Recovery Girl is a great example. She's not a fighter, but her quirk heal is one of the most valuable in the series. By kissing the injured, she accelerates the body's natural healing process. The trade-off is that it uses the patient's own stamina and life force, so overusing it can be risky. She can't regrow lost limbs, but broken bones or deep wounds can be fixed in seconds. Without Recovery Girl's quirk, most of the crazy stuff the heroes pull off wouldn't even be possible. Honestly, All Might would have been done for after his fight with All For One, and Deku probably wouldn't have been in a coma ages ago if it weren't for her healing. Mei Hatsume doesn't rely on brute strength either. Her quirk Zoom lets her focus her vision and clearly see objects up to 5 kilometers away. It's not flashy, but it's incredibly useful for a tech genius like her. With that ability, she's able to observe intricate details while inventing her support gear, including Deku's Air Force gloves and Iron Souls. Kyokajiro's earphone jack falls somewhere between a mutation and a support ability. Her earlobes act like headphone jacks that she can plug into objects to pick up sound. This makes her great at reconnaissance and infiltration. With equipment upgrades, she can also emit destructive sound waves strong enough to incapacitate enemies. The downside is that her quirk is entirely dependent on those earlobes. Lose them and the quirk becomes useless. Sirius's good ear enhances her hearing to an extreme degree, allowing her to detect high frequencies and faint sounds. It's perfect for communication and coordination over long distances, especially during rescue missions. Before All For One stole it, Tomoko Shiratoko's quirk, Search, was a key part of the Wild Wild Pussycat strategy. It let her track up to 100 people at once, pinpointing their locations and even their weak spots. All that info stayed locked in her memory, basically turning her into a walking surveillance system. In combat, that kind of quirk is insanely useful. Knowing exactly where everyone is and what their weaknesses are give your team a massive edge, whether it's planning an ambush, dodging surprise attacks, or coordinating perfectly timed strikes. On the villain side, Labrava's love quirk is a support skill that temporarily boosts her partner Gentle Criminal's power. The strength of the buff depends on how deeply she loves him. The problem is that she can only use it once per day, and it doesn't last long. Plus, it only works on whoever she loves the most, not on herself or anyone else. In short, support quirks might not destroy buildings or reshape battlefields, but they keep heroes alive, informed, boosted, and ready for what's next. They remind us that strength in this world isn't always about how hard you can hit, sometimes it's about how much you can help others keep standing.
Today's sponsor, BetterHelp, is an online platform that makes starting therapy easier. In today's video, you'd imagine that a lot of people with level 1 quirks would feel pretty down on themselves when comparing their abilities to much flashier and powerful ones we'll be discussing later. The truth is, that feeling of inadequacy is something people in real life deal with as well. We can all fall into these funks where we feel like we just aren't good enough. That's where therapy can make a real difference. Therapy gives you practical tools to understand your thoughts and behaviors instead of just reacting to them. It's not about weakness, it's about learning how to handle life better. BetterHelp helps you start the process by matching you with a licensed therapist who's trained to listen and offer unbiased guidance. You fill out a short questionnaire and can be matched in as little as a couple of days. If the first match doesn't feel right, you can switch anytime at no extra cost. They also accept HSA and FSA cards. And in 2024 alone, over 137,000 people use those benefits for therapy through BetterHelp. So make sure to use yours before they expire. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/animeinminutes to get 10% off your first month of therapy.
Basic mutation quirks. Basic mutation quirks don't bend the laws of physics or summon explosions out of thin air. Instead, they show up as physical traits, extra limbs, animal features, or enhanced senses. Think of them as early evolutionary stages of quirks, where the body itself adapts instead of channeling supernatural energy. These powers are consistent and easy to control. They don't drain stamina, don't malfunction, and they're always active. A person with a tail can use it just as naturally as an arm. Take Mashirao Ojiro for example. His quirk, Tail, gives him a long, strong, and flexible tail that functions like a third arm. It's powerful enough to break metal objects, can wrap around enemies, and support his entire body weight. Mashiro combines this with martial arts to create a fighting style focused on speed, agility, and acrobatics. He even uses his tail for mobility, whipping it against the ground like a springboard to boost movement. Then there's Spinner with one of his quirks, Gecko. It gives him lizard-like traits, letting him cling to walls. Not the flashiest ability, but it fits his fighting style. Fourth Kind's Quad Arms is another simple one. It grants him 2 extra arms, giving him a moderate strength boost and better multitasking in combat. On the other hand, Mezzo Shoji's Dupla Arms takes that concept further. He has tentacle-like appendages that can transform into extra body parts, such as eyes, mouths, or ears. These duplicates enhance his senses, giving him sharper hearing, a wider field of vision, and greater physical strength. Shoji can also extend his tentacles to grab distant objects or move it around like a grappling hook, making him surprisingly mobile for a close-range fighter. Suyu's Asui quirk, Frog, gives her the full physiology of a frog. She can leap great distances, swim with high speed, stick to walls, and extend her tongue up to 20 meters. She can also secrete different kinds of mucus, from paralysis-inducing slime to scent-masking ones. Her one big weakness, though, is cold weather. Like a real frog, she slows down and eventually goes into hibernation if exposed to low temperatures for too long. These types of quirks make daily life easier and can definitely help in hero work. Better senses, mobility, and reflexes all matter, but the main drawback is scalability. You can't exactly train a tail or frog tongue to rival a city-destroying blast. Quirk users at this level can hold their own against weaker opponents, but they don't really stand a chance when things get serious. Most of the time, heroes like Mashiro and Suyu play support roles in big fights, backing up the heavy hitters instead of taking the spotlight. They can polish their physical skills, but the quirk itself doesn't grow. Against opponents who can fly, shoot lasers, or control gravity, they're easily outmatched in raw power. They're not useless, just limited by what they can do. They're stable, practical, and serve essential roles even if they don't dominate fights. They keep the balance between the heavy hitters and the tacticians, making sure that teams function as more than just a collection of flashy attacks. Single function quirks. Level 3 quirks are where quirks start to feel like real superpowers. They're not just physical mutations or passive traits anymore. They're active functional abilities built around one clear purpose. Whether it's hardening skin, firing lasers, or producing acid, these quirks give users a single but defined edge. This is the level where quirks start shaping fighting styles, and users begin tailoring their techniques around offense, defense, or support. These abilities are a step above the basics, but they come with real limitations. Many have tricky activation methods or drawbacks that go beyond simple stamina loss. Some overheat, backfire, or wear down the body if pushed too far. So while they open up more tactical options, they also demand precision, endurance, and control. Take Ichiro Kirishima's hardening, for example. His quirk lets him harden and sharpen parts of his body, turning his skin into jagged stone-like armor. When active, his defense skyrockets. Explosions, fire, or even massive blows barely faze him. He's taken hits from Bakugo's blast, Dabi's flames, or even Gigantamakia's attacks without going down. The trade-off is that his quirk has a breaking point. If he takes too much punishment or keeps it up for too long, the hardening weakens, and he burns through stamina fast. But while it lasts, Kirishima becomes a tank on the battlefield, breaking concrete, shattering blades, and punching hard enough to force shielded enemies to block. He's also resistant to bullets, which makes him perfect for protecting teammates and civilians in the middle of combat. Then there's Mina Ashido and her quirk, Acid. She secretes a corrosive liquid from her body that she can adjust in both thickness and strength. It's flexible. She can melt through solid objects, create slippery surfaces, or even use a harmless version on her feet to skate around with incredible mobility. But the more she uses it, the more her skin loses resistance to her own acid, and overusing it risks dehydration and even death. Mina doesn't have brute strength like Kirishima, but she's resourceful. She uses her acid to control the field, limit enemy movement, or assist her own. Hantasero's tape quirk might sound goofy at first, but he uses it with impressive creativity. From tape dispenser-like openings in his elbows, he shoots out long, strong tape strands that can wrap, swing, or trap his target. He uses them to capture enemies, swing through the air like a grappling hook, and even block attacks by spreading the tape across surfaces. The material is tougher than normal tape, though extended use dries out his skin. Zero's mobility and battlefield control make him an ideal support fighter, and he's shown that he can switch between offense and defense seamlessly when things get chaotic. Minoru Mineta doesn't rely on raw strength either, but his pop-off quirk is more dangerous than it looks. He can pull small sticky spears from his head, endlessly regenerating as he plucks them. These spears stick to almost anything except himself, letting him bounce off of them to move around or use them as traps to immobilize opponents. If he plucks too many too fast though, his scalp starts bleeding. Despite his quirk's silly appearance, Mineta uses it cleverly in team battles, setting up opponents for his allies and keeping enemies restrained. Toru Hagakure takes stealth to another level with invisibility. Her body is permanently unseen, letting her slip past any form of visual detection. This gives her a huge advantage in ambushes, reconnaissance, and sneak attacks. She can also reflect light to create blinding flashes, turning her quirk into an offensive tool when needed. The catch is that her invisibility doesn't extend to clothing or equipment, forcing her to fight unclothed and unarmed to stay undetectable. Despite that, Toru's quick movements and close combat tactics make her one of the best infiltrators in Class 1A. Yuga Aoma's naval laser, on the other hand, is the definition of a flashy power. He can shoot a concentrated laser beam from his navel strong enough to blast through solid concrete. It's powerful, but it comes with a painful drawback. Fire for more than a second, and his stomach rebels, literally giving him intestinal pain. Since Yuga was born quirkless, his body couldn't handle the quirk that was given to him, which made controlling it a real struggle, so he had to wear a special belt to keep it in check, while pretending that his quirk's instability came from a birth defect. But after all the training at UA, he managed to tone down those nasty side effects and get way better control over his power. The beams also have recoil, letting him launch himself around the battlefield at high speed. Later on, Yuga learns to fire his lasers not just from his navel, but also from emitters in his costume shoulders and knees, though that strains his body even more. He can even shape his laser into a light blade or fire uncontrolled bursts that blind and damage everything nearby. His quirk demands precision, and pushing it too far can easily backfire. Despite being stronger than level 2 abilities, level 3 quirks are still limited by scope. Their power depends heavily on how their user applies it. A laser beam is only dangerous if it's accurate. Acid is only effective if it's controlled. These quirks don't usually dominate through raw strength alone. They shine through adaptability, timing, and teamwork. Many heroes at this level focus on refining fundamentals, mobility, stamina, precision, and decision-making, to get the most out of their one ability. Over time though, some users manage to push their quirks past their limits, and evolve them into new forms. Kirishima is a perfect example of that growth. During the Shie Hasaikai arc, he reaches his peak form, known as Unbreakable Mode. By pushing his hardening quirk to its maximum, his entire body becomes extremely rugged and jagged, giving him near total resistance to physical attacks. In this form, he's practically a living fortress, taking direct hits that would knock out most heroes. The form only lasts 30 to 40 seconds, but in that short window, he can deliver devastating punches capable of knocking down massive opponents. It's the result of training, experience, and sheer determination, and while it's not officially labeled an awakening, it shows just how far a simple ability can be pushed. Later on, during the final war arc, Yuga's quirk undergoes a true awakening. While on the brink of death during a fight with Kunieda, his quirk surges in power. He fires off his wild naval laser, and Toru's invisibility bends the light around, scattering it everywhere. The result is a blinding flash that hits everything nearby, and leaves anyone close totally disoriented. This moment highlights how emotional or physical extremes can trigger evolution in even the most straightforward powers. The idea of quirk evolution starts becoming visible at this stage. Level 3 users are the first to show that quirks aren't static. Through training, emotional stress, or near-death moments, their base quirk can awaken and grow. It's not easy, and it often comes with consequences, but it proves that even simple quirks hold deeper potential waiting to be unlocked. While they don't warp reality or summon cataclysmic energy, they're consistent and dependable, making them ideal for everyday hero work. These are the quirks that represent the working class heroes, the people who train relentlessly to perfect one move, one skill, and one purpose. Whether it's Kirishima's unshakable defense, Mina's quick adaptability, or Sero's control over mobility, these quirks show that being average in power doesn't mean being weak. Versatile combat quirks. Now we're entering the superpower zone, where things start to get flashy but still tactical. Level 4 quirks are the all-rounders of the bunch. They can hit hard, defend when needed, and pull off creative utility moves depending on how their users think on their feet. These aren't one-trick abilities. They're flexible tools that let their wielders adapt mid-battle, a huge advantage when things get unpredictable. What sets level 4 quirks apart is their balance. They're powerful enough to stand against top opponents. Users at this stage tends to dominate through sharp instincts and adaptability. Like level 3 abilities, these quirks evolve with experience and creativity, constantly opening new ways to fight. The key here is versatility. A good level 4 user can switch between offense and defense on the fly, chains move together, and counter a variety of enemy types. In teamfights, they are the glue that holds the strategy together, filling roles whenever needed. The catch is that these quirks usually burn through stamina and focus fast. Keeping up peak performance means having the physical conditioning and tactical mindset to match. Overuse leads to exhaustion, or worse, complete loss of control when it matters most. In combat, these quirks dominate mid-tier matchups and can even push higher depending on the user's growth. They're the kind of powers that define the professional scene: efficient, flashy, and extremely entertaining to watch. Within My Hero Academia's world, this level represents the standard for pro heroes. Anyone operating in this field is expected to reach this tier: strong enough to save lives, versatile enough to handle chaos, and stable enough to stay in control. One of the clearest examples of a level 4 quirk is Shoto Todoroki's Half Cold, Half Hot. It lets him generate ice from his right side and fire from his left. On the ice side, he can lower temperatures to dangerous extremes, freezing anything he touches and shaping ice into massive walls, waves, or sharp constructs. He uses it creatively too, forming trails to skate on, launching himself forward, and using the terrain to his advantage. From his left side, Shoto unleashes scorching flames capable of wide-range offense and even forming defensive barriers. However, his complicated relationship with his father made him rely heavily on his ice side for years, holding back his flame control. While he can use both elements at once, it took time and training to master balancing them. Overusing one half causes his body temperature to crash or spike: frostbite from too much ice, heat stroke from too much fire. To fix this, Shoto trained by sitting in barrels of water, alternating between freezing and heating it to get his body used to regulating both. Eventually, he learned to combine them into a balanced cold fire mode, circulating hot and cold blood through his body. This gave him natural resistance to heat-based attacks and increased offensive power. However, it's tricky to maintain. Losing concentration causes it to break down. With further training under the Wild Wild Pussycats, Shoto reached a new level of efficiency. During the final war, he used his enhanced cold flames to match Dabi's blue flame, which burns over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite Dabi's thermal advantage, Shoto's improved technique allows him to overpower his brother and even freeze Kamino City, winning with minimal injuries. Later, when Dabi unleashed a suicidal explosion, Shoto returned alongside Tenya to use his ultimate move, Great Glacial Ager, freezing Dabi completely and ending the threat for good. Shoto's still growing, and his early bias towards ice slowed his overall progress, but his potential remains massive. With both halves of his power now in sync, he's finally stepping into what a level 4 quirk user can really achieve. Next up, we got Katsuki Bakugo, whose explosion quirk gives him the ability to sweat nitrogen glycerin-like fluid from his palms and detonate it at will. The more he sweats, the stronger his explosions. But there's a physical price. Overuse makes his arms ache from the recoil and stress. Bakugo's explosions aren't just about brute force. He uses them for movement, defense, and positioning. He can propel himself at high speeds through the air, dodge attacks mid-flight, and create shockwaves to block incoming hits. Through training, he even submerged his hands in boiling water to expand his sweat glands and improve his output. After nearly dying during his fight against Tamura Shigaraki, Bakugo's quirk underwent a major boost, a sort of mini-awakening. His cluster technique lets him condense his explosions into rapid-fire bursts that are stronger and faster. This gives him insane mobility and destructive potential at the same time. Combined with his Strafe Panzer support gear, he can amplify his howitzer impact to a whole new level, blasting himself around the battlefield and firing off wide-range detonations with pinpoint precision. Bakugo's control and creativity make Explosion one of the most adaptable combat quirks in the series. It's loud, relentless, and perfectly fits the kind of fighter who thrives on aggression and precision. Moving to a different side of versatility, Ochako Uraraka's Zero Gravity might seem simple at first, but she turned it into a genuinely formidable ability. Her quirk allows her to nullify gravity on any solid object she touches with her fingertips, making it weightless until she cancels the effect. She can use it for offense, defense, or rescue, making debris float to create obstacles or lifting wreckage to help in search and rescue operations. By cleverly manipulating her surroundings, Ochako can gather floating debris and turn it into a massive meteor of rubble before sending it crashing down on her enemies. The only limitation early on was that exceeding her 3-ton weight cap or using the quirk on herself caused severe nausea, but through training, she pushed past those limits, improving her endurance and control. Under Pro Hero Gunhead's mentorship, Ochako learned close quarters combat, including grappling and disarming techniques that perfectly complement her quirk. This new skill set allowed her to fight effectively at short range, flipping opponents by using their own force against them. During the final war, her quirk reached a new stage. Her awakening allowed the effects of zero gravity to spread between multiple targets touching each other. She no longer needed direct contact with all of them. She also removed her previous weight limit and gained better precision when lowering objects. This gave her the ability to lift entire battlefields worth of debris and use it in combat or disaster relief. Then there's Fumikage Tokoyami and his Dark Shadow, one of the most visually striking and dynamic quirks in Class 1A. Dark Shadow manifests as a living shadow creature that can expand or contract based on available light. In bright light, it's smaller and weaker, but easier to control. In darkness, it grows stronger, faster, and more aggressive, but that power comes at the cost of control. During his training, Tokoyami practiced in total darkness to master Dark Shadow even in its strongest form. He learned to keep it stable in conditions where it would normally rampage. Later, during the battle with Moonfish, it was revealed that his emotions also fuel the quirk. Anger or fear can amplify Dark Shadow's strength, but also make it harder to restrain, turning it into a dangerous double-edged sword. By the time of the final war, Tokoyami had become one of Class 1A's heaviest hitters. He was handpicked by the Hawks to help in the event of a high-level stalemate, and he didn't disappoint. Fighting alongside his mentor against All For One, Tokoyami managed to land a critical blow that shattered the villain's life support helmet, a feat that took immense power. As the battle continued under stormy skies, Tokoyami pushed his quirk even further, achieving total release, Dark Shadow Ragnarok. The darkness boosted Dark Shadow to colossal size and strength, even stunning All For One into silence. If not for the villain's rewind effect, Tokoyami's attack might have finished him off entirely. That performance impressed even All For One himself, who considered stealing Tokoyami's quirk on the spot. A few other heroes fit comfortably in this tier too. Denki Kaminari's electrification lets him absorb and discharge electricity, covering his body with energy that can paralyze enemies or act as area control. He can store charge for larger bursts, and even develop gear to focus or redirect it. His main weakness early on was over-discharge, which fried his brain temporarily, but with improved focus and support items, he learned to use it more strategically. Neito Monoma's copy quirk gives him the power to replicate another person's quirk for a short time after physical contact. While it has strict time limits and requires strategy to pull off effectively, Monoma's intelligence makes it a dangerous tool in the right hands, especially in team battles where coordination matters most. And finally, Momo Yaoyorozu's creation quirk gives her near-limitless versatility. She can create any non-living material or object from her skin by converting her body fat into molecular components. The catch is that she needs full knowledge of the item's structure to create it accurately, meaning her intelligence directly affects her combat power. Through training, she learned to produce complex tools, defensive barriers, and even weapons in seconds, making her one of the most resourceful heroes in her class. Level 4 quirks showcase the perfect mix of creativity and raw power. They're not about brute strength alone, but about how effectively a user can apply their abilities in dynamic, fast-changing scenarios. Each of these characters, from Shoto's dual element mastery to Ochako's environmental manipulation, proves that flexibility is just as important as raw power. These are the heroes, and sometimes villains, that make the battlefields exciting to watch. They represent the golden standard of what a fully trained quirk user should look like: efficient, tactical, and always ready to adapt to the chaos around them. Multi-layered quirks. Level 5 quirks are where things start getting wild. These are abilities that break logic, twist perception, and make the impossible look routine. You'll usually find them in the hands of top-tier pro heroes or veteran villains who know how to weaponize every detail of their quirk. What separates level 5 from the rest is complexity. These powers don't just hit hard, they bend rules. They can distort time, mess with physics, alter perception, or even manipulate how others experience reality itself. These quirks need more than just raw power to use effectively. You need sharp intellect, precise control, and ironclad focus. Most of them are multi-layered, combining several effects at once. In battle, they're less about chaos and more about control. The user sets the pace, dictates the flow, and forces their opponents to react. A single mistake against one of these quirks can decide the fight before it even begins. But that kind of power comes with heavy baggage. Many level 5 quirks are risky to use, draining stamina fast or requiring very specific activation conditions. Some can even backfire if the user loses concentration or gets emotional mid-fight. When they fail, the consequences can be catastrophic. Despite that, mastering one almost guarantees elite hero status. These are the abilities that make villain groups retreat and hero agencies build entire strategies around. Society doesn't even know how to regulate these properly. They're too dangerous, too unpredictable, and too specialized. And few showcase that level of control better than Shota Aizawa, aka Eraserhead. Aizawa's erasure is simple in concept, but terrifying in practice. By looking at someone, he can completely nullify their quirk, The moment his gaze locks on, the target's quirk factor shuts down until he blinks or closes his eyes. He doesn't even need a full view, just one part of the target's body within sight is enough. Against most opponents, that's game over. Since combat in the My Hero Academia world revolves around quirk usage, taking that away leaves enemies completely exposed. Aizawa can even target multiple people at once as long as he keeps his eyes open. When Erasure is active, it creates a slight anti-gravity effect around his head, which he cleverly uses with his binding cloth for mobility and precision strikes. His combat style is built around this synergy. He erases an opponent's quirk, disorients them, and then goes in fast with his binding cloth and close-range attacks. He's an expert at shutting down stronger opponents before they even realize what's happening. But Erasure has its drawbacks. The effect ends the instant he blinks. Prolonged use dries his eyes out, making it painful and risky to maintain. It also doesn't work on mutant-type quirks, those that alter the body permanently, or on natural physical strength. Plus, the quirk itself has no offensive traits. It's all about control and timing. If his eyes are injured, even slightly, it could ruin his ability to use Erasure effectively. Despite that, Aizawa remains one of the most feared heroes in one-on-one encounters. Even without his quirk, he's a strong hand-to-hand fighter. His skill set turns quirk-dependent enemies into sitting targets, giving his allies complete control over the battlefield. Mirai Sasaki, better known as Sir Night-Eye, had one of the most mentally demanding quirks in the series, Foresight. This ability lets him see a person's future from a third-person view for up to an hour. Once activated, he could track every action the target would take during that time, down to the smallest movements. To activate it, Night-Eye needed to touch the target, then make eye contact. After that, he could observe their future like watching a film reel of events yet to happen. The range wasn't even clear. He could see events that occurred years in advance. The activation method was kept secret, both for strategic advantage and to protect against enemies exploiting it. In combat, Night-Eye was nearly impossible to hit once he used Foresight. Knowing every move his opponent was going to make lets him dodge with surgical precision, turning battles into a one-sided display of control and prediction. Combined with his physical ability, he could dismantle stronger opponents without taking a scratch. Outside of the battle, the ability carried huge emotional weight. Without All Might's permission, Night-Eye used Foresight to look into his partner's future, and saw a horrifying death at the hands of an unknown villain. That prophecy haunted him for years, shaping his belief that all fates were set in stone. But during the battle against Kai Chisaki, Night-Eye's perspective began to change. While fighting the Yakuza leader, he saw a future where Chisaki killed Deku and escaped with Eri. Yet, that vision didn't come true. For the first time, a predicted future was altered. It shattered his fatalistic belief and made him realize that fate could be rewritten. Even after his death, his prophecy about All Might's fate nearly came true during the final war, when All For One tried to kill him. But thanks to Bakugo's intervention, All Might survived, finally breaking Night-Eye's grim prediction once and for all. Kurogiri's Warp Gate is another perfect example of level 5 complexity. His quirk lets him create and control a dark fog that acts as a teleportation portal. Anything that touches this fog can be transported to another location of his choice. His teleportation works on coordinates, meaning he needs to know the exact exit point to use effectively. Once the destination is set, he can even create multiple exit portals at once, moving people or objects to different places simultaneously. This made him invaluable to the League of Villains. He was their escape plan, their transport system, and their tactical advantage all in one. During the UA raid, even Tomura held back from punishing him, knowing that without Kurogiri, they had no way to retreat. Despite its massive utility, Warp Gate is also highly situational. It requires deep spatial awareness and careful calculation, since a misaligned exit point could easily cause disaster. Still, the ability to bend space at will makes Kurogiri one of the most strategically important villains in the series. Finally, there's Mirio Togata, the hero who turned a broken quirk into one of the most polished fighting styles in the series. His quirk, Permeation, lets him become intangible and phase through any physical matter. He can move through walls, floors, or attacks as if they're not even there. While active though, he becomes completely cut off from the world. He can't see, hear, or breathe because light, sound, and air all pass through him. His sense of balance disappears, and he feels like he's constantly falling. If he doesn't keep at least 1 foot solid, he'll literally sink into the ground. Permeation also doesn't affect his clothes or gear unless they're made from his own hair, which is why his hero costume stays on when he phases through objects. And since his quirk doesn't extend to others, carrying people safely becomes extremely tricky. He has to constantly deactivate and reactivate his quirk just to protect others, which can leave him exposed. At first, Mirio struggled with all these limitations. Every mistake sent him crashing through floors, or left him gasping for air. But after years of intense training under Sir Night-Eye, he perfected it. He learned to use the physics of repulsion to his advantage. If he solidifies his body while overlapping with matter, it launches him outward. By controlling his positioning and angle, he can launch himself in any direction at incredible speeds. This mastery led to his ultimate move, Phantom Menace. Mirio phases into surfaces, then launches himself out repeatedly in rapid succession, attacking from all sides at unpredictable angles. To onlookers, it looks like he's teleporting, but it's actually just perfect control over timing, prediction, and physics. Through this technique, Mirio turned Permeation's drawbacks into his greatest weapon. His movement is seamless, his attacks precise, and his transitions instantaneous. He fights like a blur, hitting targets before they even realize he's moved. In short, level 5 quirks define the upper limit of human capability in the My Hero Academia world. At this stage, a quirk isn't just a weapon, it's a test of how well someone can balance power, intelligence, and restraint. And for those who can, they become the people who rewrite the outcome of battles, and sometimes even the future itself. Transcendent quirks. Level 6 quirks are the kind of power that makes the rest of the world stop and stare. At this stage, quirks are capable of affecting the world on a massive scale, warping the environment and changing the course of society itself. Their influence goes far beyond individual fights. One person with a level 6 quirk can alter the balance of power between nations or reshape the battlefield entirely. The defining trait of these quirks is impact. Their users can destroy cities, erase existence, or manipulate the very laws of reality. But these abilities come with extreme drawbacks. They push their users to their limits, both mentally and physically, and prolonged use can lead to exhaustion, mutation, or psychological collapse. These powers were never meant for humans, and that imbalance shows. In combat, level 6 quirk users dominate effortlessly, often requiring multiple opponents, specialized counter quirks, or raw strategy to even stand a chance against them. One-on-one, they're practically untouchable. Tomura Shigaraki's Decay is one of the clearest examples of a level 6 quirk. With a single touch of all 5 fingers, he can disintegrate anything, living or non-living. The decay spreads rapidly, consuming everything it touches, and if the victim doesn't act fast enough to stop it, the effects spread through their entire body until nothing is left but dust. Once awakened, decay can even spread through the ground and air, turning large groups or entire areas into crumbling wastelands within seconds. Tomura received his quirk as a child, and its sudden emergence caused chaos. Untrained and terrified, he accidentally destroyed everything around him, including his own family. That early trauma shaped how dangerous decay became. In battle, Tomura's fighting style relies on proximity. Getting close enough to touch the opponent once is often all he needs. Normally, he keeps at least one finger lifted when handling objects to avoid destroying them, but when angered, that restraint vanishes. During his battle with Redestro, Tomura's quirk awakened, massively expanding its range and power. He no longer needed to use all 5 fingers. Even partial contact was enough to start the disintegration process. This awakening let decay spread across vast distances, eliminating hundreds of people he never physically touched. His power became so intense that an entire city, Deka City, was wiped off the map with a single wave of destruction. After his surgical enhancements, Tomura's decay reached catastrophic levels. A single touch could destroy massive sections of Jaku City, and even debris thrown off by its disintegrating surroundings could instantly kill any one hit. Despite the overwhelming power, Tomura learned to control his quirk with pinpoint precision, choosing which targets to spare, a level of control that turned a weapon of mass destruction into a tactical nightmare. Interestingly, decay wasn't originally a random mutation. It was derived from Kai Chisaki's quirk, Overhaul, which had the power to both disassemble and reassemble matter. When All For One transferred the modified version to Tomura, Dr. Gorecki removed the restoration aspect, leaving only the destructive component, a quirk stripped of balance made purely for ruin. With that being said, Chisaki's Overhaul also lands on this level. This quirk allows him to deconstruct and reconstruct anything he touches, giving him complete control over matter, living or non-living. With just one finger, he can instantly tear apart an object or a person, and then reshape it however he wants. This disassembly and reassembly process happens almost instantaneously. He can reform terrain during battle, creating spikes, barriers, or pathways from the ground beneath him. When the area around him remains connected, his control is flawless, but if the ground breaks apart or becomes fragmented, it limits his precision. Overhaul also allows him to combine 2 different entities into one, merging their physical and quirk traits. This is how he fused with Shin Nemoto, gaining both an enhanced form and access to Nemoto's confession quirk. In this hybrid form, his speed, strength, and quirk efficiency skyrocketed. The same power that destroys can also heal. He can reconstruct bodies to a perfect uninjured state, essentially regenerating fatal wounds in seconds, but the process is excruciating. Those he heals are completely disassembled before being restored. He uses this ability during combat to recover from injuries and to support his subordinates. Outside of battle, Overhaul became the foundation of his most infamous act, the creation of the quirk erasing drug. By repeatedly disassembling and reconstructing Eri, who possesses the Rewind quirk, Kai extracted biological samples from her body and used them to engineer a drug capable of permanently erasing another person's quirk factor. After each experiment, he reconstructed Eri's body back to normal, leaving no visible evidence of harm, a horrific abuse of Overhaul's precision. However, Overhaul has its limits. Chisaki must touch something directly for his quirk to activate, and there's a brief delay between disassembling and reconstructing matter. When his arms were destroyed by Tamura and Mr. Compress, Chisaki lost access to his quirk entirely, since his quirk factor resided in his hands. Kathleen Bate, better known as Star and Stripe, was America's #1 pro hero, and her quirk New Order also pushed the definition of power to its limit. With it, she could impose a rule on reality itself, altering the properties of people, objects, or even intangible things like air or energy. To activate her quirk, Kathleen needed to touch the target, say its name, and declare the rules she wanted to apply. She could only maintain 2 rules at once, but even that was enough to reshape her surroundings on a colossal scale. She once solidified air into massive invisible constructs shaped like herself, using it as a giant avatar to fight with. This enormous air body mirrored her movements and could interact with physical objects. Her creativity with New Order was unmatched. She once gathered the energy from laser beams and condensed them into massive swords for her air construct, then redirected a barrage of Tiamat missiles mid-flight, turning them into a giant flaming strike that produced a city-sized explosion. New Order wasn't limitless though. She couldn't use clever wording to indirectly affect others. For example, she couldn't declare that anyone who breathes this air will die, unless she directly applied this rule to that person. Kathleen often kept one rule active that enhanced her physical stats, giving her superhuman strength, speed, and durability, though still below All Might's prime. During her final battle against Tamura, she used her quirk in innovative ways, such as removing all air in a wide radius to suffocate him, or catching redirected lasers by commanding the air to act as a barrier. When the fight escalated, she temporarily dropped her self-boosting rule to use both of her rule slots offensively, maximizing her destructive potential at the cost of her defense. New Order's biggest limitation came from identity recognition. The target needed to acknowledge themselves as the name Kathleen spoke. If their self-perception didn't align with hers, the rule wouldn't take effect. This meant that it failed against people with multiple personalities or unstable identities. Additionally, she couldn't boost her own power beyond her natural limits, so even her body had a breaking point. Ultimately, Tamura managed to steal New Order, but not without consequence. Before dying, Kathleen imposed one final rule. New Order will revolt against other quirks. When Tamura absorbed it, the quirk turned against him, causing massive internal destruction and wiping out several of his stored quirks. In the end, New Order erased itself completely, disappearing along with Kathleen's lingering presence. Among heroes, Enji Todoroki, also known as Endeavor, wields one of the most destructive quirks in existence, Hellflame. This ability lets him generate and manipulate massive amounts of fire, controlling both temperature and intensity with remarkable precision. He can unleash huge waves of fire to incinerate opponents, or focus it into more precise attacks depending on the situation. In battle, Endeavor uses his flames to completely overwhelm enemies. His fighting style mixes direct physical combat with high-temperature flame bursts, creating a relentless offensive rhythm. Against weaker enemies, he uses low-heat flames to subdue them without causing permanent harm or damaging the surroundings. But when the fight escalates, he raises the temperature to deadly levels, delivering decisive finishing attacks. His control is exceptional, but his quirk comes with a serious cost. Every time he uses high-temperature techniques, his own body temperature rises dangerously. Prolonged use can lead to fatigue or even physical collapse. Despite having advanced tolerance for heat, Endeavor isn't immune to it, and overheating remains one of his greatest weaknesses. His most notable technique includes Flash Fire Fist, where he concentrates his flames to their highest temperature, creating a beam of pure heat that vaporizes whatever it touches. The technique's enhanced version, Flash Fire Fist Hell Spider, emits multiple streams of fire sharp enough to slice through skyscrapers. His ultimate attack, Prominence Burn, produces a massive column of flame capable of annihilating anything in its path. The Plus Ultra variation amplifies this even further, releasing an inferno on a scale that can melt steel and level buildings. Despite having this level of raw destructive potential, Endeavor is bound by strict hero regulations. Heroes are prohibited from using excessive force that could cause mass casualties, so he rarely unleashes his full strength in populated areas. Instead, he reserves his most devastating moves for high-level villains, powerful Nomu, or open battlefields where collateral damage is minimal. At full power, Endeavor's flames are capable of leveling parts of a city, making Hellflame one of the most dangerous city-tier quirks in existence. At this stage, a single decision can change the course of nations, and that's what makes level 6 quirks not just strong, but terrifying. They symbolize the danger of evolution without restraint, a preview of the chaos that the quirk singularity theory warns about. Quirk Singularity, or God-tier quirks. This is where power leaves the realm of reason and slips into something closer to divinity. These quirks break past every physical and mental limit, reaching a state where even the human body can't properly contain them anymore. This is what's known as the Quirk Singularity, the point where evolution outruns humanity's ability to control it. The idea behind the Quirk Singularity came from Dr. Kyudai Garaki, who theorized that as generations pass, quirks would keep merging and evolving. Each new generation would inherit stronger, more complex abilities, but human biology wouldn't evolve fast enough to handle them. Eventually, quirks would become so overpowered and unstable that no one would be able to control them anymore. 70 years before the main story, Garaki's theory was dismissed as nonsense. Scholars mocked it for being unproven and unrealistic, but one man took it seriously. All for One. With his ability to steal and use countless quirks, he knew the limits of the human body better than anyone. His own body was already straining under the weight of so many quirks, and Garaki's research gave him a way to understand what was happening to him. So All for One stepped in to fund Garaki's experiments, turning him into one of his most loyal allies. Garaki's theory was eventually proven true. The quirk singularity wasn't just a myth. The first major sign came through Tomura Shigaraki, whose quirk evolved in terrifying ways. After his mutation, he sprouted hundreds of fingers from his left hand, a grotesque display of how his body was adapting to the overwhelming power inside him. Those extra fingers weren't random. They symbolized Tomura's growth, his rage, and his instinct for destruction. His body was literally reshaping itself to embody his desire to destroy everything around him. Later on, when his plan failed and his mind slipped deeper into madness, Tomura's body transformed again into a defensive state, with layers of fingers covering him completely. A horrifying image of a body and soul consumed by its own quirk. After his surgery with Dr. Garaki, Tomura became something else entirely. The operation, meant to merge All for One's quirk into his body, was only 75% complete, yet that was enough to push him beyond human limits. All for One's will now existed inside Tomura's original DK quirk, feeding off of Tomura's anger and hatred to merge their minds into a single monstrous being. Once fused, Tomura could use All for One's signature ability, the power to steal quirks. Combined with his decay, he could steal an opponent's quirk and immediately finish them off by turning them to dust. Like All for One, he could also transfer quirks to others, creating his own army of enhanced followers. But unlike One for All, which passes powers symbiotically, this version of All for One was parasitic. The will of the original All for One constantly tried to overtake Tomura's body, feeding on his negative emotions to seize control. Still, Tomura's sheer determination allowed him to wrestle back control, asserting his own dominance over both the quirk and the consciousness inside it. Once the fusion stabilized, Tomura gained near immortality. His regeneration became so advanced that even Endeavor's Hellflame couldn't burn him down. He could sprout black tendrils with glowing cracks from his body to strike enemies, deflect attacks, or grab multiple targets at once. His collection of stolen quirks also made him unpredictable in battle. He had Ragdoll's Search to track enemies, Deku's Danger Sense to predict attacks, and even wings from a Nomu that gave him full aerial mobility. But that was just the start. The quirk singularity warped his entire body into an ideal form, bulky, almost inhuman, covered in endlessly regenerating fingers. His strength, speed, and durability skyrocketed levels that surpassed both All Might and the original All for One in their prime. Even after his quirks were suppressed by erasure during the final war, Tomura still dominated the battlefield in the UA fortress. Every hero who stood against him was nearly killed before Deku's arrival. His body could adapt mid-fight, evolving its structure based on his mental state, allowing him to overcome any countermeasure. By the time he achieved complete control, without All for One's lingering consciousness, Tomura had become a being capable of erasing Japan in a week, decay spreading as fast as thought. If Tomura represents the destructive side of level 7, then Izuku Midoriya embodies the controlled chaos of it. His quirk, One for All, is the counterpart to All for One. It's a power built on selflessness, designed to pass strength from one person to another. But over generations, as it accumulated energy and quirks from previous users, it evolved into something that transcended its original purpose. Eventually, One for All ended up in the hands of a quirkless guy named Toshinori Yagi, who became its 8th user. With it, he could stockpile a ridiculous amount of power, boosting his strength, speed, agility, and durability way past human limits. Toshinori had a natural knack for using the quirk. He mastered it almost instantly without any help, which no other user managed to pull off. What made him stand out even more was how he could transform his body into a huge muscular figure to hide his real identity. Taking the name All Might, he became known as the most powerful person in the world. At his peak, he could wipe out multiple threats in seconds like it was nothing. His very presence kept villains in check and made Japan one of the safest places on Earth, earning him the title Symbol of Peace. But even the strongest hero has its limits. After defeating All for One, the most dangerous villain alive, All Might was left with a brutal injury that slowly weakened him over time, cutting down how much power he could use and how long he could stay in his hero form. When Deku inherited One for All from All Might, he gained access to that massive stockpile of energy that pushed his body far beyond human limits. In the beginning, his body couldn't handle it. Even at 5% power, he'd shattered bones. But through training, he adapted. At his peak, he could comfortably fight at 45%, with bursts of up to 100%. Each percentage point made a huge difference, with moves like Detroit Smash and Delaware Smash evolving into devastating techniques that reshaped the battlefield. Later, Deku unlocked the hidden aspect of One for All, the Vestige Realm, a space where consciousness of all previous users resided. These vestiges could appear when Deku was in danger, activating the quirk even when he was unconscious. Over time, he learned to communicate with them freely, gaining access to their individual quirks. Gear Shift to manipulate velocity, Fa Jin to store kinetic energy, Danger Sense for awareness, Black Whip for grappling, Smokescreen for cover, and Float for aerial combat. When Deku combined these abilities, he became a walking arsenal, versatile, unpredictable, and capable of adapting to any opponent. In his full Cal 100% state, his speed and power reached All Might's level, allowing him to dismantle foes like Chisaki in seconds. By the time of the final war, Deku's mastery of One for All was unmatched, though even that wasn't enough to outmatch Tamura's fusion. Her quirk, Rewind, lets her reverse a living being's body back to a previous state. She can heal injuries, undo mutations, or even rewind someone out of existence entirely. The power source lies in the horn on her head. The bigger the horn, the stronger the output. Rewind is an accumulation type quirk, meaning it builds energy over time before releasing it. This explains why Monoma, after copying it, couldn't use it instantly. It also means that Eri has to wait until her quirk's energy charges up before she can activate it again. The terrifying side of Rewind was revealed when the quirk first awakened and she accidentally erased her father from existence. Her blood also holds unique properties. It can suppress or remove other quirks by reversing their evolutionary process. This is what Chisaki exploited when he used his own quirk to disassemble and reconstruct her body, harvesting her blood to create the quirk-destroying drug that can erase a person's quirk permanently. Eri's quirk is limited to living beings. She can't affect objects or abstract concepts like time itself. Still, her potential is beyond comprehension. During the Shie Hasaikai raid, when Deku fought Overhaul, Eri subconsciously used her quirk to rewind his injuries, allowing him to sustain full Cal 100% without breaking his bones. But her lack of control nearly killed him, forcing Aizawa to use Erasure to shut her quirk off. After being rescued, Eri was taken to UA High, where she began slowly learning to control her ability. With help from the staff, she practiced by healing small creatures, eventually managing to restore Mirio's Permeation quirk, which had been erased by Shin Nomoto using the quirk-destroying bullet. By the time of the final war, her mastery had improved enough for her to snap off her own horn and hand it to Deku, giving him a temporary power-up that restored his broken arms mid-battle. Even now, Eri's quirk hasn't reached its full potential, but when it does, Rewind could theoretically undo death itself, making her one of the most powerful beings alive, a child with the ability to reset existence. Level 7 quirks represent the breaking point of evolution, the final stage where power exceeds control. Every user at this level becomes something beyond human, their bodies and minds reshaped by their abilities. For Tamura, it meant becoming a monster driven by decay and hatred. For Deku, it meant carrying the will of generations and using it to perceive hope. For Eri, it's the burden of infinite potential waiting to mature. That's what defines Level 7. They transcend science and logic, bending time, rewriting DNA, and altering reality itself. Users at this level risk losing everything: their identity, their sanity, even their humanity. Their existence alone can disrupt the balance of the world.